Hello and welcome to OLC 40. This is Term 1B. We are in Class 2, Unit 1, working on assignment number 1. What is different between this term and last term's recordings? Last term was my first time teaching in this particular kind of format, and I think I moved very quickly through some of the initial assignments. And I also didn't talk enough about grammar and other conventions at the beginning of the course. So this term has all the same assignments as term 1A, but the classes cover the assignments more slowly, especially in the first couple weeks. And I also try and make sure there's more information about grammar, punctuation, capitalization, and usage are being taught more at the beginning than some at the end. I'm also becoming aware of which assignments are kind of tricky for students, and I try to make sure to explain those ones a little more carefully. I also think we had some technical issues during the first term, and I think I've got those kind of worked out. So you could easily watch either, but they don't follow the exact same format in terms of I cover different assignments at different times, but they are all there, okay? Okay, so quick review. Yesterday we talked about how a sentence needs to have a subject and a predicate. The subject tells us who or what is the main topic or actor in the sentence. By actor, I mean the one who's doing the action, not a movie star. And the subject will be a noun or a pronoun. So a simple subject is just the noun or the pronoun, like he went to the store. A complete subject is all the adjectives and articles and nouns that make up the subject, the whole subject. Like the little red coat was too small. All those words, the and little and red and coat, are part of the complete subject. For a compound subject, it's two or more nouns or pronouns that are the main topics in the sentence. So I've got here, boys and girls enjoy playing tag. Now, I could have adjectives in there as well, and they would still be part of what's called the compound subject, okay? So it doesn't really change and become single and complete the way we do it once it's a compound, with the whole thing is the compound. A subject might be a pronoun. Pronouns just replace a noun in a sentence. The subject pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. There are other pronouns that exist, but we're not going to talk about them all right now, okay? I ran to the store. You are allowed to come over. He went fishing. She is on the porch. We can eat now. They are going to the garbage dump. And you can see it's very common for them to be at the beginning of the sentence, and they have to be in front of the verb, right? I has to come before ran. You has to come before are allowed. He has to come before went fishing. So like in English, I couldn't say went fishing he. It has all the words, but in English, the word order matters and the he has to come first, okay? So I'm just going to take that off there. Oh, okay. Why does this even matter? Well, because a lot of times when we're talking with someone, it's really common for us to drop the subject out of a sentence because a lot of times we already know who or what we're talking about. But in writing, we can't do that. So, for example, if your friend asks you in person, what do you want to do tonight? In conversation, it would be totally fine to say, go dancing. But in writing, we have to have a subject. So we would need to write, I want to go dancing. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you some examples of sentences where the person forgot to include the subject. Okay, so we're going to look at these and think about how we could add a subject to these incomplete sentences. We need to add a noun or a pronoun or a noun phrase. Remember that the subject has to come before the verb, and it's very often at the beginning of the sentence. Not always. Sometimes there can be a little phrase in front, but you can see these all start with a verb. That's not very common in English, okay? So went home. I could say I went home, and now it's got a subject. Sorry. Felt sad. I could say something like, my Little sister felt sad. Fished out by the second narrows. Yesterday, I fished out by the second narrows. So here's an example where there's a little introductory phrase before we get to the subject. Yesterday. I could put this word, I could put this right here at the end if I wanted to. I fished out by the second narrows yesterday. Yesterday is really describing when I fished. And one of the cool things about adverbs, that's what this is, an adverb is sometimes we put them at the end or near the verb. Sometimes we put them at the front of a sentence to just describe like all of this happened yesterday. Now, obviously, if I did have it at the end, I wouldn't leave it with a period and a capital there. I fished out by the second narrows yesterday, and then I would put a period there. Okay, but it could come at the front. Flew to Thunder Bay for a medical appointment. I could say my dad flew to Thunder Bay for a medical appointment. And you can see once I'm adding things, I have to change that capital to a lowercase because it's no longer the beginning of the sentence, right? The default in English is that we use the lowercase letters unless there's a reason to use the capital letters, okay? Got a job. I could say, my son got a job. Get rid of the big G, put a little g. Made some moose stew for supper. Kukum made some moose stew for supper. Now again, I got to get rid of that capital M and make a little m. Tried to clean up the yard. The boys tried to clean up the yard, and the capital T goes away and it becomes a little t. So for all of these, they were originally incomplete and we added in a subject. Okay, so here we have some other simple sentences. There are other types of sentences in English, right? This is just, we're doing the very starting point here, okay? Do these sentences have a subject? If it does, let's highlight the subject. So she cries. Who or what is crying? Well, the moment you ask the question, it comes kind of obvious, right? She is crying. So going swimming. Does that have a subject? No, it's incomplete. Peter and Daniel like to fish. Well, who like to fish? Peter and Daniel do. So there's our, that's a compound subject because there's two nouns in there. Watching the fireworks. Is there a subject there? Who is watching the fireworks? Well, we don't know because they don't tell us. I am happy. What's the subject there? I. The I is the person who's being happy. The little green snake slithered away. So who slithered away? The little green snake. I'm just going to highlight the whole thing. It's a noun phrase. Just going to highlight it all. Typed a message. Well, who typed a message? We don't know. They didn't tell us. The nurse is coming back. Who is coming back? The nurses. Climbed a tree. Who climbed a tree? Well, we don't know. They didn't tell us. Maybe it was a bear. Maybe the bear climbed a tree. Okay, so we've talked today and yesterday about certain types of speech, and I wanted to talk about some of the other ones. Now, parts of speech are really just jobs that words do in a sentence. So some words can have more than one job. Others can only ever have one function, and we've already talked about this. So articles introduce a noun. Those are a, an, or the. Sometimes people think of them and kind of roll them in as a type of adjective because adjectives also sort of describe a noun. Nouns are just a person, place, thing, or idea, like doctor, street, tape, or war. Pronouns replace a noun, like she, he, you. Adjectives describe or modify a noun. big, French, pretty, shiny, sunny, hot. Verbs show an action. Jump, dream, drive, or it could be a state of being. I don't remember if we've talked about this yet. Am, is, are, was, were, and will. Now, here are some we really haven't talked about much yet. Adverbs. Adverbs describe or modify a verb. They can also modify an adjective or another adverb. So very, carefully, tomorrow, next, slowly, happily, or gently. They'll often answer how, where, when, those kind of questions about a verb. Like we went fishing. Where did you go fishing? We went fishing over the creek. When did you go fishing? We went fishing over the creek in the afternoon. Conjunctions. Conjunctions join two clauses together. There's two main different kinds of conjunctions. We're not going to worry about that part yet. Here are some examples. For and nor, but yet, so, or, after, if, and although. Those are just some examples. There's a whole lot more. Prepositions. Prepositions are kind of a connecting word. I think of them like a little bridge, and they basically connect a noun or a pronoun to the other parts of the sentence. And they do that by showing what type of relationship is between that noun and the rest of the sentence. So I could say David swam under the bridge, and I'm connecting the word the bridge to David swimming. And how is he swimming? He's swimming underneath a bridge. So it's a connecting type of word. Interjections. Those are just words that are shouted to get attention or to show emotion, like, hey, no, wow, ouch. Right? So they're often not part of a sentence. They're more sort of outside of a sentence, commonly anyways. So parts of speech versus parts of a sentence. We've been talking about parts of a sentence. Parts of speech is just looking at the micro level, just the word level. Whereas parts of a sentence are looking at the functions of words or groups of words in a sentence. And the two main parts of a sentence we talked about are subject and predicate. And remember that in English, the subject will always come in front of the predicate. So today, a little bit later on, we're going to discuss predicates. Not right now, I don't think. Sometimes it gets people kind of mixed up to say, oh, well, this is a noun, but it's also a subject. But it simply means that a noun is one small part of a much bigger category called a subject. And then a subject is part of a bigger category called a clause. And a clause might be a sentence all by itself, or it might be one more part of a complicated sentence. But if you think of a sentence like a map, it kind of makes sense. So Thunder Bay is one small part of the larger section of Northern Ontario. And Northern Ontario is one part of the larger area called Ontario, the province. And then Ontario is one part of the larger geographical area called Canada. And here's a little map. All this down here is kind of the southern, and this area up here is northern. There is quite contention about northern, by the way. Some people feel like Thunder Bay should kind of be that dividing line across. Some people feel that how the people live and the landscape in this area is so similar that it should all be considered part of the North. But anyways, so Thunder Bay is Thunder Bay, but it is also part of Ontario. It's not that it's two different things, it's that it's one small thing in the middle of a bigger thing. So here's the idea of a map, right? So if I had the word eagle, well, it's a noun and it's part of the subject, right? The complete subject, a baby bald eagle. It's just the simple subject because it's only the noun. And then sword is the predicate, and the green part is the whole giant sentence. Okay. So a sentence is just kind of like a map, and it shows the overlap and the relationship between cities, regions, provinces, and countries. So I don't know if that helps. I hope it does. All right, so we're working on Unit 1 today, and just the very first assignment. The first little bit of this, though, has some information kind of about the whole course, and this I find kind of useful every now and again to refer to, so I wanted to go over it, okay? So this course is designed to help you acquire and demonstrate the cross-curricular literacy skills that are evaluated by the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. If the course is completed, it will meet the provincial literacy requirement for graduation, and it also gets counted as a full credit in English. You will read a variety of informational, narrative, and graphic texts, and you will produce a variety of forms of writing, including summaries, information paragraphs, news reports, and opinion pieces. You will also manage and maintain a portfolio containing a record of your reading experiences and samples of your writing. The course is broken down into 4 units with 5 lessons each. And in total, there's about 20 lessons, including the culminating portfolio project. You will be encouraged to have regular contact with your teacher, which is me, during the course. And throughout the course, you will be asked to evaluate your own progress with your work by responding to the feedback from your teacher and also by writing little journals. So if you're willing to put the time and honest effort into your work, you will be successful with this course. Be sure to ask for help if or as needed along the way. So the coursework from units 1 to 4 is worth 70% of your mark. The literacy portfolio, which is the very last assignment, is worth 10% of your mark. And then a final exam or a culminating activity is worth 20% of your mark. If you live in a place where there is no learning center and you might have a hard time writing an exam, contact me when you're getting closer and we will work out other alternatives, okay? I do want to point out the 4 units are not created equal. For some reason, they put the most assignments in the first unit. So there's like 18 assignments. And I know as a student, I would have just assumed that they all had that many, but actually they don't, okay? So unit 2 only has 11 assignments, unit 3 has like 10, and unit 4 only has 5 assignments, although in fairness, they are bigger assignments. But it's something to keep in mind as you're working that not all the assignments, not all the units are as heavy as unit number 1, okay? So lesson 1, assignment 1, we're working on right now. That's the 7 grandfather teachings. And then tomorrow we've got growing up in my community, which is what, Thursday? And then on Monday, we're going to do assignment 3, 4, and 5, because 3 and 4 are really fast and easy, okay? So this goes through all the different types. You can see some places they've only got a couple of assignments. Here we've only got 1, and other places they might have 5 assignments. So they aren't necessarily equal, okay? Here are the rest of the assignments. We talk about pictures, advertising, visual information, narrative text. We write a cover letter and do a resume later on. And then we kind of do a bunch of review work, basically, in unit 4, where you kind of demonstrate that you've mastered a lot of the skills that we practiced in the first 3 units. Okay, in your unit, pages 9 to 16 includes a bunch of grammar basics. It is a great place to check and review your knowledge about parts of speech. And some things we'll end up skipping over and we'll come back to later. Other parts we've already gone into more detail because I think they need more information to understand properly. All right, so we're going to quickly talk about predicates here. A predicate is basically the verb plus all the other words that are attached or connected to the verb. So let's look at what might get connected to the verb throw or through. A direct object, which would be a noun or a pronoun that can receive the action. I threw the football. The football is the direct object. Or there could be an indirect object, which is usually a person who receives the direct object. Like I threw John the football. Adverbs or adverb phrases can describe the verb, like I threw carefully. And there could be prepositional phrases connecting the verb to a noun or a pronoun. And the connecting phrase will explain their relationship to each other. So I threw to the goalposts. There could be one or all of these types of words in the predicate part of the sentence. And some examples might be, I threw the football carefully to the goalposts. So we've got a few in there. I threw John the football carefully. And I'm just pointing that out because when you're saying connected to the verb, what do they mean? It just means they're expanding on the big idea that's in the main verb. Okay, there are 3 main types of predicates. There's the simple predicate, which is simply the verb or the verb phrase. And the complete predicate is all the words attached to the verb. So Jason threw the ball. Threw is the simple predicate, and threw the ball is the whole predicate. Am running, those two are both verbs. They are the simple predicate. And am running to the beach is the complete predicate. Now, you can also have a compound predicate, just like we had a compound subject. And that's when a certain subject performs two or more actions. And it's going to be joined by a conjunction. So a compound predicate by nature is also a complete predicate. So the boys swim and dive in the lake. That's a compound predicate. Jenny sings and dances very well. Also a predicate. The janitor cleans the rooms and fixes broken machinery. And that is also a compound predicate. There are three main types of verbs in predicates. There are action verbs, there are state of being verbs, and there are helping verbs. The first type of verb describes what someone is doing, their actions like run, dream, think, work, sleep, washing, hug, swim, fish, draw, or write. The second type of verb describes their state of being. The most common state of being verb is to be in all its different forms. Be, am, is, are, was, were, will be, and have been. The third type of verb helps another verb, and that creates a verb phrase. So for example, I am buying. Am is a helping verb, right? He has been out all night. Has is a helping verb. The buying is an action verb. The being is a state of being verb. So there's three different types of verb that you might find. A lot of times people only look for this first kind, and they aren't sure how to recognize these second two because those aren't always taught in school. They usually kind of teach the easy part. I don't know why they don't really discuss these ones as much, but they don't. Highlight the verbs or the simple predicates in these sentences, and then we're going to underline the complete or the compound predicate. Okay, the dog jumped over the wall. So where's the verb there? Well, it's the action verb, jumped, right? And then the whole predicate is everything from jumped to the rest of the sentence. Jumped over the wall. The cats ate and slept all evening. So ate and slept, the whole thing becomes your compound predicate, right? The whole thing. Oh, and then I gotta remember to underline it. I apologize. Okay. She is having a rough morning. So where are the verbs there? Is having. That's going to be a verb phrase, by the way. Oops. Oh, sorry, it's not what I wanted to do. Hang on. Okay. She is having a rough morning. Now, this whole section is all the complete predicate. It's all connected to the idea of what she's having. I will be running the marathon next week. So we actually have three verbs working here together. Will be running. That's fine. And then the whole thing from will on, all of that is our our complete predicate. She cooked dinner and washed laundry today. Cooked is our verb. Okay. And cooked dinner and washed laundry today is our complete predicate. Susan and Jack are flying home today. Our flying is our verbs. It's a verb phrase. And the whole thing, our flying home today, is part of our complete predicate. Gee, I don't know where you guys are. It is really warm where I am. Okay, so today we're going to start with Unit 1, assignment number 1. This assignment starts with looking at the grandfather teachings and how they've impacted your life. To help us get ready for that assignment, I thought we might watch a little video on the grandfather teaching. Here is a playlist of different people discussing the teachings and how they affect them or their life. We won't necessarily have time for them all. We're just going to look at one or two. This is also listed in your unit. It discusses the grandfather teachings there. So either one is fine, just to give you kind of a starting point, basically.
While both NetSuite and QuickBooks offer software designed to help.
See how this works. It says respect Chief Stacy, and I missed the last word there, sorry.
So respect is, before I found my way back into the culture and the language, I used to always talk to my kids about the word respect. You know, if you have respect for things, if you have respect for yourself, you'll be okay in this world. You know, respect everything, the people around you, respect those who can't respect them, you know, those who need your help. So respect is very much a part of how I live my life, even before I learned of the grandfather teachings. You know, and when I did learn about them, people always talked about, well, which one's the most important to you? Which one do you think's most important? And I always go back to respect because that's the one I found on my own, and then I found the other ones through the course of life. And then I came to realize that one is not enough. You know, you have to have them all, and they have to reflect, because even if you're respectful, you can still cause pain, you can still cause hurt, you can still think of yourself as above people. That's why humility and the other teachings have to go hand in hand with respect, or with any one of each other. So for me, it's a knowing there's a combination that you have to always aspire to, but it begins for me with respect.
Okay. So I also wanted to include that for the reason that, hang on a second. You can see down here, I strongly suggest listening to them as a great way to get some ideas for yourself for the assignment. I've had a few people who just kind of like opened up a dictionary and copied down some words. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense because dictionaries aren't written in complete sentences. It's usually like a string of phrases. So A, it's not grammatical, and B, the whole point of the assignment is to get your ideas and what you think about it. So that's what I'm looking for. So if you're just copying down definitions, it's not going to be as effective or give you as good marks as if you write to me about what you think about each of these qualities. Okay, so here's the actual assignment. Lesson 1 is 5 assignments, and all those assignments together is worth 80 marks. But assignment 1, which is the one we're working on today, is just 20 marks, okay? So it says here, welcome to the Ontario Literacy course, OLC 40. The course has been designed with you, the student, in mind. One of the indirectly stated themes in the novel you'll be reading throughout this course is the importance of walking the red road or the right path in life. You will travel with Jimmy, who is the main character in the novel Jimmy Comes Home, as he struggles with various issues that in some way affect us all. Along the way, Jimmy has opportunities to choose which path he will travel. Like us all, Jimmy is not perfect. However, he has resources, including elders of his community who try to help him. Robert Checkwich, the author, has woven the 7 grandfather teachings into the fabric of his book through their actions, or not if they don't follow things, rather than with their words. Like, they don't spend a lot of time talking about it, but if you're reading it, you can see it present in what the decisions they're making. Before we take one step into the course, you need to revisit those teachings, as they will become your greatest teacher both throughout this course and throughout the life. This is one story of how the grandfather teachings came to the people. Your community or family may not find the 7 teachings important or valuable. However, it is the hope in this course to be respectful of all teachings. Again, I didn't write this, by the way. This is just something I've received and I am reading to you. This was written quite a few years ago. A lot of the teachings are virtues or character traits that are common in many religions and across the world. Some are more valued than others, depending on where people live and what their philosophy or religion inspires them to believe in. But these are common. So even if you didn't particularly follow the 7 grandfather teachings, whatever you do follow, whether it's an organized religion or just simply your own system of what do I think is right? What do I think is a good idea to do? These are just some virtues that some people might use. So the Creator gave 7 grandfathers who were very powerful spirits the responsibility to watch over the people. The grandfathers saw that people were living a hard life. They sent their helper to spend time amongst the people and find a person who could be taught how to live in harmony with creation. Their helper went to the 4 directions to find a person worthy enough to bring to the grandfathers. While the boy was traveling with Otter, they were visited 7 times by spirits who told them about the gifts. Here is what they said. To cherish knowledge is to know wisdom. To know love is to know peace. To honor all of creation is to have respect. Bravery is to face the foe with integrity. Honesty is facing a situation. In facing a situation is to be brave. Humility is to know yourself as a sacred part of creation. And truth is to know all of these things. Otter returned to his friend, who, because of all the time spent in the spirit world, was now an old man. The old man gathered all the people around and told them of his journey to the 7 grandfathers' lodge. He explained how to use the gifts. He explained that the opposite of any of the gifts would lead to ruin. He gave them the understanding of opposites. It was now up to the people to follow the path laid out before them. The old man gave them all they needed for the development of the spiritual side of life. Now, I don't know if you can hear it. There's some workmen in the background doing some hammering. So in case you can hear some thumping noises in the background, everything's okay. It's just they're doing some construction. I apologize. So the teachings as noted in the piece above, wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth, will now be the focus of your first assignment in the course. You're to think about each of these teachings and what they mean to you in your life, and you will then share your thoughts in approximately 1/2 page of writing in paragraph format, which we'll talk about again in a minute. You might want to write down some ideas about each teaching to help you get started with your writing. For example, with regards to wisdom as a teaching, maybe you want to include such words as knowledge, understanding, or positive attitude. If need be, you can use a dictionary or thesaurus for more information. Now, I want to point out that means information. It doesn't mean copy out a dictionary definition, okay? As you work through this course and experience the various successes and challenges it will bring, try to keep these teachings in mind. They will help you persevere and get through any part of the course you will find challenging. You are to write and submit 2 copies. Be careful with your spelling, grammar, and punctuation in your final copy. The rough copy is going to be worth 10, and the final copy will be worth 10, and altogether it's worth 20 marks. So you need to write a rough draft, and then you're going to need to take a copy of that rough draft and do your improvements and corrections on that. And then from that, you're going to make your final, your good copy. And then you're going to hand in to me your original rough draft before you made all the corrections, and then the final good copy so I can see what you did with your writing. I've had a problem with a lot of people thinking that the good copy is supposed to be like printed more neatly. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about writing more effectively. So the difference between the rough and the final shouldn't be that one is neat and one is messy. The difference is that one should have better spelling and better punctuation and more elaborate sentences. So we're going to talk about how to do that a little bit. That's going to be a main theme of this entire course. So don't worry too much. This is only 20 marks. It's a small part of the course in total, but this gives me a baseline to look at and to see how you write, okay? Oh, this is just a page that gives you some commonly misspelled words. So it's worthwhile to take a look at that and see if any of those are ones you've used. I find the biggest thing is sometimes where there's 2 letters doubled up, people sometimes forget and only put one letter. And that's an easy mistake to make, obviously. And then here are some misused words. The biggest one that's most oftenly misused is the words there, and there. This there, T-H-E-R-E, is a location, like he left it over there. This there, T-H-E-I-R, is possessive. that it belongs to somebody. Like the students have submitted their assignments for marking. And then the last there is they're really happy that summer is there. And it's like a short form for they are, okay? There's some other ones here too. This is the biggest one. We'll talk about those a little bit more later. I want to kind of focus today. All right, writing process. Sometimes we assume that people who write, like professional writers, like journalists or novelists or songwriters or something, they just put their pen on the paper and out come beautiful sentences with perfect spelling and grammar without any effort at all. But that's just not how it works. In reality, writing is a lot of work, and most people who write for a living follow certain steps. And now these steps are not like a lockstep map. People circle around and go back over and that kind of thing. But a lot of people try and skip all the steps and just go to right to number 5. And I don't find that's very effective. Okay. So our first step is pre-planning or brainstorming. Our second step is a rough draft. Our third step is revising that rough draft. Then our fourth step is editing or proofreading our rough draft to make sure we've got all our spelling and conventions done correctly. And then we've got our final draft, or what's sometimes called publishing. In our case, it's handing it in to me. Okay. So the assignment suggests writing down what each, they said step, I don't mean step, what each teaching means to you. And that's because they want you to put it in your own words. This is one of those hard things I find to do. So sometimes students kind of panic and they're worried about it. And so they just look up the dictionary and then they try to put what they wrote, what they see, into a sentence. But the thing is, dictionary definitions aren't written as sentences. Often they include examples. And so you can end up with this sentence that really is kind of confusing. So for example, here is your dictionary definition. They've given you the word. They've told you what part of speech it usually is. They've broken it down into syllables. There's a little spot here where you could listen to it if you weren't sure how to say the word. Here's the plural. You could click on this blue link and it would give you some synonyms for the word honesty. Here is their first definition. 1A, adherence to the facts. Sincerity. Okay. And then they give you an example. Someone like doubted the honesty of the witness, or it could be B, fairness and straightforwardness of conduct, calling for honesty in politics. And you can see in their examples, in this particular dictionary, they didn't even write a full sentence. So that would be a great one to copy. So for example, sometimes I get people looking at this kind of thing and they write to me, honesty is an adherence to the facts, sincerity, fairness, straightforwardness of conduct. So they've written all the words. They've included these various punctuation marks that have meaning in the definition, but they don't make any sense in a sentence. And also, we don't really talk this way, right? It's also considered a form of plagiarism. Plagiarism can have various consequences. Plagiarism is definitely a type of cheating where you're using information or work from a source, but you don't give credit for the source, okay? There can be various consequences from needing to redo an assignment, or maybe you fail that assignment, or you could possibly even fail a course if there's a lot of repeated plagiarism, and we've talked to you about it. Okay, so putting the concept into your own words would have created a more natural sounding sentence, and that usually will be more grammatical too, so a win-win. So for example, I might say, I think honesty means telling the truth without holding anything back. I find it is especially important to be honest with people when you have made a mistake rather than trying to hide it. I think honesty is hard to live up to because sometimes there can be hard consequences to telling the truth. So if you do need to use a dictionary because you're not sure what one of the words means, just pick one of the definitions, not all of them, and then build on that with examples. Okay. And I would say, it's been like the dictionary states that honesty is straightforwardness, but I believe, and I would explain it, right? Because then there's no plagiarism because you're telling me where you got that definition from. Okay. If you don't like one dictionary definition, or if you feel like, well, that didn't really help, didn't really explain things, then just pick a different definition. That's fine. So here's an example. Here's the first one we looked at. Here's a different dictionary definition. Here they've got the quality or fact of being honest, uprightness or fairness. And down here they've got truthfulness, sincerity, or frankness. So I could even, if I wanted to, start off with saying, and I'm not sure what dictionary this was, but I'm going to say Webster's for right now. The Webster Dictionary. Oops, Webster Dictionary states that honesty is being truthful, sincere, or frank. But I think truthfulness is the most important part of honesty. Now, you wouldn't want to look up every single dictionary definition. I feel like we probably know what bravery is and, you know, that kind of thing. You don't have to look up every single one, but some of them are a bit tricky, like honesty versus truthfulness, right? So it's better for you to write what you yourself think, not just copy things out of the dictionary. So I think truthfulness is the most important part of honesty. In my life, people who were dishonest caused me a lot of pain, and I have seen the harm to others when I have not been honest as well. Now, the other thing is, remember to use a paragraph format, not a list format. A list format is where you just kind of like write the sentences down your page in a row, but that's not how paragraphs are written, right? If you're looking at a book, the sentences kind of run into each other. We just leave a little space, sometimes two spaces, depending on how old you are. I'm used to the 2-space rule. And then we write the next sentence. By the way, it does not matter to me whether you use 1 space or 2 spaces. I think in college, it's gone to 1 space, but you would check with whatever teacher you have. So here's an example where I said, to me, honesty is telling the truth, period. Bravery is to have courage, period. Wisdom is about being smart and knowing what to do. And often what you'll find is, yes, we use all of them, but maybe there's 1 or 2 that really call to you and are really important or pivotal in your life. And those are ones that you might want to give more details about. Okay. What is the biggest problem people have with this assignment? The biggest problem I see is they spend a whole bunch of time making their rough draft as perfect as they can, but then they don't have anything to change or make better. So they hand me in exactly the same thing and they've just crossed off maybe 2 or 3 words. Okay. It's really better to kind of spread out your time. Take a little bit of time to brainstorm before you start writing. Take a little bit of time to your rough draft. You might only need 20 or 30 minutes to just jot down your ideas. Then take a picture of that or take a photocopy of that, and now do all your corrections on that copy until you have it at the right spot. I think a lot of people are doing all their revisions before they even hit the rough draft. But we want to do it here because I really do look at the good copy to make sure that there's changes. If there's no changes between the good copy and the rough copy, it lowers your marks because you didn't do the work that's needed, okay? And I know we're just the very beginning course and this isn't quite how I would design it, but it is what it is. I'm sorry, guys. So here's an example of my brainstorming. You can see it's messy. It's not in complete sentences because this is just for me. I'm not going to hand this in. I wrote wisdom, love. I just put those in corners. Respect. I wasn't sure how to define that one. I might look up that one. I looked at bravery and humility. I think maybe those are 2 I might pick to write about. Okay, so this is my brainstorming. It's just the idea phase, and you don't hand it in. It's just for you. Now, here is an example of turning 1 chunk of my brainstorming into part of my rough draft. And just so you know, I know there's spelling mistakes here. I've been trying to take them out so you guys would have to find them. But every time I switch computers, it re-recognizes them for me. Anyways. I feel like the grandfather teachings are important to live life. Bravery has been the most important one for me. I am not naturally very brave. I always want to hide away from hard things. But many of the best events in my life have happened because I was brave. And I did things, even when it was really hard for me, like moving away from home. Now, obviously, this is not enough. This is a beginning. Some teachings I might not have very much to say about. Others I might have a lot to say about. As long as you've mentioned every one of them once and said something about them, that's fine. So now, after I've got my rough draft, I'm going to take that and I'm going to try and make that rough draft better. And the more grammar we learn as we go through the course, the more you're going to see these mistakes. So be aware, like I mark the first assignment pretty loosely. I'm not as fussy as I will be in later assignments when we've gone through more. So our very first priority, anytime you're writing, is make sure your sentences make sense. Okay, that's the biggest thing. Always check that first. After that, you want to make sure that you've used end punctuation like periods, question marks, or exclamation points. For today, I'm going to suggest that you avoid colons or semicolons unless you feel really confident in their correct usage. I would also be really cautious with commas. They're easy to misuse. We're going to be talking about commas a lot because I think they're one of the hardest punctuation marks to use correctly. We will also want to check our spelling. I did deliberately turn off the spelling suggestions, but the new computer turned them back on again. So we also want to make sure that every sentence starts with a capital letter, and the word I should always be a capital and never I. So if this were the first part of my rough copy, I would have taken a picture of this, or I would have photocopied it. So I have this to hand in to the teacher. Right? Because now I'm going to go over this, start making a bunch of changes, and then my teacher won't be able to see what my rough copy is if I do that. Okay. So I feel like the grandfather teachings are important to live life. I don't like this sentence for the simple reason that live could also be live. So then it could be like live life, and it doesn't quite make sense. Are important to live. I'm going to add a good life just because I think having live and life next to other just looked funny. I put two. Oh, hang on. There you go. Bravery has been the most important. I'm going to fix the spelling while I'm here. One for me. Most important. I'm going to say teaching. I don't want to just say one because I'm not, it's kind of vague. Most important teaching for me. I am not naturally brave. Okay. I've got a comma here, and there's a problem with this because what I've done is I've put two sentences together using a comma, which is called a comma splice error. I've got to use a period at the end of a sentence. I am not naturally very brave. I always want to hide away from hard things. Okay, well, first of all, I needs to be a capital. I always want to hide away from hard things, period. That's fine. Okay, but this is the beginning of my sentence. I need to make a capital. But many of the best events in my life have happened because I was brave. I don't know that I even need the word but there. Many of the best events in my life have happened, I'm going to check here, have happened because I was brave. Like, no, because I was brave. I'm going to put a period there. For example, sorry, capital F. For example, I felt brave when I moved away from home for the first time. Now, if I was doing this, and I'm sorry, I can't easily show you on a computer, I would just be crossing that off and writing it over and writing in the margin, and I would see all those, and you would leave those for me in that kind of copy for me to see if you can. I would want to make sure that between my rough copy and my good copy, that I made some significant changes. I am almost out of time, so I'm going to try and finish up quickly here. Let me see if I have. Okay. What I wanted to do was put my rough copy and then I would type my good copy, but that I'm not going to have time to finish all that. Okay. If you're looking for other ideas, Indigenous Reflections, they have a nice little spot here where there's some the animals that represent the teachings. There is also a nice set of posters from Quechuan that looks at the teachings. Just remember that I can't copy this. Like so it says here, the SAB brings us the teaching of honesty. I can't write that word for word because that would be plagiarism. So please be mindful of plagiarism as you do this assignment. It's a big concern because I find a lot of people are kind of overwhelmed because it's the first assignment, and so they're kind of prone to wanting to look in a dictionary or get some ideas from somewhere else. And getting an idea is okay, but you just can't copy that idea word for word. Here is our contact information. Just a quick reminder, if you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please send it as an attachment. Don't just put it directly in the email. It's very hard to print off, and it doesn't always show properly on the computer. The other thing is always make sure to put your full name, the course name, assignment number, and the name of the assignment. If it asks for a rough copy and a good copy, please make sure to label that at the top so I know which one is which. It's not always obvious, especially if you hand wrote both of them, okay? We will cover anything else tomorrow. Take a little bit of time and try and work on that tonight. Remember, this is our very first assignment, so we just want to get started. The biggest thing is just having the confidence that you can do this and put it in your own words, and you do not need to copy anyone else's words. I promise you, you have the ability to do this, okay? I look forward to seeing your assignments, and I will be, I'm on my lunch break in a minute, but then I will be back in the office for a few hours, and you can always talk to me then if you need to, okay? Take care, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.